Do- As always, Donna beat me to it. Thank you, Donna. This meeting is being recorded. I hope everyone is okay with that and they understand that. If for some reason you're not comfortable with that, you can let us know. Feel free to turn your camera off if you'd like. I'm going to share my screen. I believe I know most of you. My name is Anthony M. Condalucci Smith, and I serve as the business administrator and treasurer of Newcastle Presbytery. And today, on this third Thursday, we are going to talk about the annual financial review checklist. And what I thought I would do first is share my screen to a page hopefully everyone is familiar with, the Newcastle Presbytery homepage. So this website, we underwent a beautiful, in my humble opinion, beautiful renovation of the website with the new logo and bright colors. We've made it as user-friendly as we hope is possible. And for this resource and many other resources, if you go across the top under resources, we are going to go down to churches and pastors. And once you get there, information for churches, information for pastors, clerks, treasurers, lay folks, just a bunch of information about the presbytery resources, all kind of available to you quickly. We are going to go today under financial. And under financial, we are looking for annual financial review checklist. That is the checklist that we are going to go over today. When you click that, that brings up a PDF. You can download it, you can print it, you can make it available to you. You do not have to use this checklist when you do financial reviews. It is not a mandatory command. It is simply a number of folks have asked the presbytery, and we have been asking Mid Council Financial Network, which is a part of our synod and general assembly. We have been asking for checklists just so folks kind of are all on the same page when it comes to reviewing financial records of each other. You do not need to be a CPA to review another church's finances. In fact, the PCUSA best practice is that the person or persons completing the review should not be the ones who are doing the day-to-day bookkeeping of that particular church. Uh, Also, it is another best practice that you are not related to that person. So if you are the spouse or the child of, or the cousin of, or the friend of whomever, it just makes everyone feel a little bit better if there is no relationship to that individual. You may know them, and in fact, I'm sure you may know them. And some churches have reached out to other churches, and their treasurers simply switch books and do each other's review. That is perfectly acceptable. So this checklist, it does use the words QuickBooks. There's a note here that just says the term QuickBooks below can be substituted with whichever accounting software you're using. So if you're using an Excel spreadsheet, if you're using Quicken or NetZero or Alpo or one of the many other financial softwares out there, that is A-OK. Rather than listing all of them, the term on this checklist is just a generic QuickBooks. Forgive us, Intuit. We use the term generically. And that just allows you to not get bogged down by needing to feel like you must use QuickBooks. That's just the language that we used. So there is just a gentle reminder that the Book of Order does require sessions to make sure that there is a financial review done on an annual basis. And this checklist is, like I said, just to make things easier. So that way, every single individual church is not feeling like they need to recreate the wheel. And if this is your first time doing a financial review for another church, you're not feeling lost or like you don't want to miss anything. Um, there's a spot right at the top for the team of people. If there are more than 3 people doing the review, feel free to add those as well. List the review period. the year. So if we're in 2026, if you're doing a financial review currently, you would most likely be reviewing 2025, since 2026 is still ongoing. And by now, hopefully 2024 reviews have all been complete. You can put the date. That would be literally the day that you're doing the review right at the top. And then there's just some reviewer information right at the top, just making sure that you are agreeing that you are not doing the day-to-day financial management, which is the bookkeeping. You're not an immediate family member of the treasurer or the bookkeeper of that particular church. You've listed the dates up at the top. If you're using QuickBooks or whatever software you are, that particular church is using, you have the most likely read-only access to that you need. The treasurer or bookkeeper of that church will need to grant you that access. And then obviously you'll need access to all of the records, just helping you get set up. In most cases, the first thing that you're going to start to review are bank and investment accounts. I understand that not every church has investment accounts. Not every church has endowments. Not every church has money market or savings accounts. That's okay. Just use of this information, use what is applicable to the church that you are reviewing. When you are looking at bank statements, you want to make sure that you have official bank statements from the actual bank. A lot of times, if you've been sent a PDF, in the name of the PDF, it will actually say the word secured. I know a lot of the churches that I support use PNC Bank. And when you download a statement, it says that it's secured. So that way you know that that bank statement has not been manipulated in any way. They make their PDF, even if you have a PDF editing software, they make it so you cannot, for many obvious reasons, you cannot manipulate those bank statements. And one of the things that you want to do is make sure that the documents and the registers that you're looking at in the accounting software, the bank balances match the bank balances that you see on the statement. Also, that when you are looking at specifics, that everything matches and everything kind of reconciles out. You also want to see that things have been reconciled. Take note of any unexplained or unauthorized account that you're not sure of. You're allowed to ask questions when you do a financial review. It should be a conversation between the person doing the review and the church being reviewed. Obviously, there are many different ways to do things. We all want to make sure that we are abiding by GAAP, which is listed up here as the generally accepted accounting principles. But there are multiple ways to enter things, and if you have questions, just simply ask. The next section, when you get down to income and contributions, using that bank statement, if there are deposits, most often a Sunday deposit, clearly won't be done on a Sunday, but many churches will call it the Sunday deposit or the tithe or the offering. Whatever it says the deposit was, you want to just check to see that you have backup of that. So when you are looking at count sheets or whatever that particular church would happen to call the sheets that they use on a Sunday morning to complete the offering, many times there are two people at least doing that. So there should be two signatures on every count sheet. And if it says $100 went to the bank, there should be a bank slip that says $100. The accounting software should show a deposit of $100. The bank statement should show a deposit of $100. All of those things should just tie out. Now, depending on how the church is set up, sometimes there's a financial secretary or a separate individual who is listing each individual contribution. Sometimes the bookkeeper is only seeing the big number. So when you look at that, just make sure that whatever software or method that the particular church is using to keep track of contributions, you just want to make sure that all of those things tie out. And a gentle reminder that annual donor giving statements need to be provided to the members of the church, visitors, anyone who's given by January 31st. Some softwares will print a date to show when you either emailed statements or printed and mailed them. That's just on there just as a piece of conversation, just to make sure that everyone is on the same page. Disbursements and expenditures. Oh, I'm sorry. When you double check, this suggests that there's a minimum of 5 samples. Really, it just depends on how in depth you want to get. I would just say spot check a couple times throughout the year. Maybe spot check 1 or 2 every month or every other month, so that way you're just looking just to make sure that everything is handled properly. Disbursements. You probably want your sample size to be slightly larger here, and what you're looking for is that if somebody had a check written out to them, that there's some kind of documentation or backup. Was there a voucher or whatever that church may use? If the policy is that 2 people need to sign that they're approving it, have 2 people signed all of the vouchers. Did the person writing the check or the person signing the check, did they write themselves the check? Did they write it to somebody else? Is there a copy of a receipt or something just to show that the reason why some bill was paid has been approved by somebody other than the person who is writing the check and somebody who is signing the check? Again, just a quick overview of things that you can be looking for. If anything looks to be out of the ordinary, if you're noticing that somebody is getting a quote unquote reimbursement for rather large amounts multiple times throughout the year, is that a reason to flag that or to take a look? Or is that just how that particular church is doing its work? And if it's been approved and that's how they're doing things, then maybe it's not something to be nervous about. But if you're seeing a lot of checks of large amounts going to the same person, maybe that's something just to take a quick deeper dive into. Same with credit card statements. Who has access to use the credit card? If there's a church credit card, who approves it? How are receipts kept? How is the bill paid? And do people have to turn in their receipts at the end of the month as they use it, et cetera, et cetera. Especially payments that are made back to a member of session or an officer or a member of the finance committee or any committee. Just you want to double check that there are proper procedures in place, that multiple people are aware of that and that have approved it before any checks are written to any people. The next section here is payroll and compliance. There are many payroll softwares out there. There are some folks who I know that do all of the manual calculations of all of the taxes themselves and just write a check. They don't use any software. Whatever that particular church may be using, you want to make sure that the salaries that they're paying to the individuals match the contract that was given to that person, especially if it's the pastor. The terms of call are approved by the congregation. It's pretty easy. You take that number, divide it by however many pay periods there happen to be. If you get paid every month, that's 12 in a year. Every other week, that's 26 in a year. Just twice a month is 24 in a year. So whatever that works out to be, do the math. Most oftentimes the salary should be the same every pay period throughout the year. If there's an hourly employee, how are their hours tracked? Does anyone approve them before they're just turned in and paid? Does the pastor get a housing allowance? Is that being handled properly? Are quarterly 941 federal payroll tax being is the report being filed, and are the payments being made on time? Were W-2s issued by January 31st? If you have 1099 contractors, are the 1099s being filed? Now, this says here, paid $600 or more. I believe January 1st of this year, and I need to double check that. I believe I saw that $600 threshold is going to be increasing to $2,000. So I can check on that and we can update this at the end of this year if that is the case. But a contractor, do you have a W-9 on file for every contractor? And then are you filing the 1099s on time, properly? If your pastor or any of your church staff are participating in the PCUSA Board of Pensions plan or any retirement plans, that's usually through Fidelity, through the Board of Pensions, are those payments being made properly? It's not on here, but did they make their MedRat payment to the presbytery, et cetera, et cetera. So the next section, designated and restricted funds. Again, I know that not every church may have designated and restricted funds, but if a particular church does, are the ways that the bookkeeper and the treasurer are doing the accounting, are they correct? If there's a restricted fund that is restricted for, say, pastor's housing, is that what it's being used for? And if it's being restricted for church school or youth or whatever mission happens to be designated, just double check to make sure that those restricted and designated funds are being used in the way that they are intended. Section 7, budget versus actual. A budget is a roadmap. And while it is a good indication of where we all think and hope that the year is going to go, we all know, unfortunately, that sometimes the income side doesn't always match what we had intended and what we had hoped. And sometimes the expense side might be slightly higher. There are things out of our control. We all, unfortunately, have to pay the utilities, but we don't have any control over those rates, what they happen to be. If you are paying the city, if you are paying a larger company for sewage and water and electric and gas and propane and et cetera, even services like lawn mowing, like we understand that sometimes those rates are set and we can't change them. And then you have a winter like we did last year where you may have budgeted for snow removal and Mother Nature said, that's fine, but you're going to get a lot more snow than this year than you did last year. So surprise. But budget versus actual, when you're looking at it as the one doing the review, you're not necessarily judging them on how they performed. You're just making sure that things kind of look to be where maybe we would expect them to be. There should be an annual budget that was approved by session on file. And if you're using most financial softwares, you can enter the budget right into that system. And then each month as you go along, as you're entering expenses, it'll show you where you are against that budget. Some churches, not all, do a mid-year budget amendment. If that's the case and the budget may have changed, you would just want to make sure that they have that documentation, which was approved by the Finance Committee and/or session. Again, just making sure that there's a paper trail for any decision that was made, any change that was made at all. Record keeping and QuickBooks. Again, we're using that QuickBooks as a generic term. You want to just make sure that any of the files that you were given, or if you were printed files or emailed files and then you have read-only access to the file, you can pull that same file yourself. Just make sure that what you were given is the same. There's no gaps or there's no kind of large chunks of data missing. The chart of accounts, many churches may choose to number their chart of accounts. Some churches may not, but you just want to make sure that the chart of accounts is organized in some kind of way and that it's some way is consistent with the structure of the budget. So if there's an item that it has a budget, that item should show up in the chart of accounts somewhere. You want to take a quick look for any journal entries and just make sure that there's backup. One of the things that I do when I'm doing bookkeeping for a church is a lot of them will keep paper copies of things. Some churches, right when in speaking from QuickBooks experience, when you are entering a journal entry or an invoice or paying a bill, you can actually attach a PDF of that invoice directly to that. So if somebody pulls up any invoice or check, there's the documentation could just be right attached to that. They don't have to call or email the bookkeeper or the treasurer or go to a specific church and look at the paperwork. You can just see it right there. Not every church person does it that way, and you don't necessarily have to do it that way, but having access to those that documentation can be really, really helpful. If you are using a non-cloud based software, for example, if you are using QuickBooks Desktop, you want to just make sure that that's being backed up on a regular basis. The bookkeeper will let you know that. If you are using QuickBooks Online, that is backed up. Every time you make a save, that is backed up into the cloud. If there are paper copies of financial records, you want to make sure that they are stored securely. Copies of the check stubs that gets attached to the vouchers, you want to make sure that those are locked up securely somewhere. Check stock that hasn't been written to anyone yet, obviously make sure that that's locked up. And then just double check that they are following the record retention policy, which is at least 7 years. Financial records are available immediately. Anything after that, hopefully, is shred. There are some churches that have financial paperwork all the way back from the very beginning. Just know that you do not necessarily need to keep any documentation, for the most part, more than 7 years. Obviously, there are exceptions to things, and there's an entire record retention policy that tells you what you need to keep and for how long, etc. You kind of just want to make sure that particular church is abiding by that. Internal controls. Churches, I would assume, should have policies about who can do the counting, who can do the check writing, who can do the check signing, who does the bookkeeping. Are there multiple people? You want to make sure that the person who is writing or printing the checks is not also the one who can sign them. In a lot of cases, when possible, the person who is the check signer, who is on the bank, maybe is not the one doing the reconciliation. You just want some checks and balances internally. You want to make sure that there's a finance committee that meets at least monthly, maybe every other month, but that they are receiving financial reports and they are reviewing them. And then obviously session is receiving financial reports as well. That is actually stated in the Book of Order. That session is required to receive financial reports at each stated meeting. There are some churches that meet, say, the first Monday of the month. Session does. As you may or may not be aware, it is really difficult to have all of the financial reporting done for the previous month when the first day of the month is the first Monday of the month is the day of the session meeting. Sometimes it's possible. A lot of times it's not, and you may not have everything complete. Banks haven't always had a chance to even close the previous month out. But as long as if that's the case, as long as there's a cadence, and if today is June 1st and it's a Monday and May just closed, maybe you're looking at April's meeting, and then maybe there's a plan that either in the July meeting you will review May and June, or as soon as the May reports are able to be distributed, whatever the plan happens to be, as long as it's consistent and the reports are making it to the folks that they need to in a timely manner. Finally, the review conclusion. Obviously, as you're going through, if something is not applicable, it's not applicable. The person doing the review, just make sure that you have completed the checklist and that you have a plan for what you're doing with that checklist. Are you giving it back to the finance person? Are you giving it back to the bookkeeper? Are you the one who's presenting it to the session for that church? Whatever the plan happens to be. The last page gives you, the reviewer, an opportunity to put a brief summary of your findings, any concerns, any items that are following up, any recommendations. Here, obviously, if you need any more space, feel free to add additional pages. Then just sign that you completed it. Whoever signed up, pardon the scroll, Anyone whose name and role are listed here on the review team should also review this checklist, review the summary of findings, any suggestions, any recommendations, and then sign and date it. And then just a note here, was it presented to the Finance Committee? Was it presented to the session? Again, this checklist is not necessarily meant to be the end-all be-all. It is not a requirement. It is not the only thing. If it's not on this checklist, it doesn't mean you can't ask about it. Doesn't mean you shouldn't ask about it. It doesn't mean that there are other things on here that might not apply. That's completely okay. It's just meant to give you a starting point, so that way you do not feel like you are starting from scratch, have no idea, are feeling overwhelmed at looking at a year's worth of data. And a year's worth of data at different churches may look different. Some churches, when I prepare all of the files for the last year, I can fit it in a half of a banker's box. Some churches take 2 banker's boxes and still have stuff on the side. It all depends on how much paper is used and how busy the church is and how often things are checks are written or bills are paid, or et cetera, et cetera. So every church has their style, has their way. We, as the reviewer, really just want to make sure that we are following any legal guidelines, any PCUSA best practices, and then we can share with one another, share with the church how maybe you prefer to do things, or if you have questions about things, chat with the church you're doing the review for, just to see how do they handle certain scenarios, and do they have a plan or a policy for this or for that, or if you come across something that's new, or hopefully when church treasurers rather are meeting each other and are switching books, maybe you've forged a relationship that if you have a question, you can reach out to someone and don't feel like you're all alone. I am not a CPA. I'm not an expert in every single area of accounting, but I am treasurer at ncpresbytery.org, and I'm always happy to email about questions that you may have, or best practices, or if there are resources that you are looking for, which is how this particular document came to be. Enough folks have asked for it, and we did enough research to know that PCUSA had a checklist like this and kind of changed it, and they don't anymore. So we created this. But resources are helpful. It's great to share them and to have somebody to chat with and talk about things. I'm always happy and willing to do that as well. And I will stop talking and see if any of you all have any questions, comments, concerns.
Anthony, this is John Barano from Concord Presbyterian Church, and thank you very, very much for your presentation today.
Sure.
And I wish we had this before we had a recent financial review last month. But we used the checklist in Concord Presbyterian last month. It went very well. We were very pleased to have the checklist to make sure we're asking some logical questions in a logical sequence. So thank you very much for all your work.
Yeah. My pleasure. And I happen to have just insider information that Ron McKinney from Concord has also used this when he was asked to review another church. So it's great. Like I said, you don't have to use it, but it's a great resource, and I'm happy that it was helpful for you all.
Just one thing to cite is as we went along, there were not any questions about procedures. Like, for example, what is the procedure of what the treasurer is supposed to do? So questions like that came up, and it led to good discussions about our procedure is very good for this, but it's outdated for such and such. So we did flag some recommendations, one sort of related topics sort of coming out of using the checklist.
Yes. I think that makes a lot of sense. And in the internal controls and assessment, I think part of those discussions are kind of asking about what that, but you're right there. It does not specifically state right on the document specifically just what are the policies and procedures, and then maybe ask to have a copy of those. So thank you for that.
Anthony, I think you kind of,
Hunsinger from Milford. Again, thank you for sending this out. It's been very helpful in doing the reviewing.
Oh, good. You're very welcome, Mark. I hope all is well there in Milford.
We're trying.
Yeah, I know. Alan, you had something as well?
yeah, I just wanted to ask, is there any other churches, you'd said that this document is not the end all be all, but our church annually always looks at listing what's in our safe deposit box. Is that a common practice or something we should be doing?
If your church has a safe deposit box, I would think that should be what's written on here. It does talk about petty cash and it does talk about bank and investments. I would probably put that in that section or somewhere. But yeah, it is any assets that the church has should be listed and included in the review. And if there are reconciliations of that or who has access to that, the safe deposit box, who makes decisions on what's used and not used and when it's excess and all of that. Yeah, I would feel like that should be definitely included.
Thank you.
Yes, of course.
Anthony, thank you. I think when we were asked by Cool Spring, we were one of the people that said, "Whoa, we need something to guide us." So thank you. This is very helpful.
Yeah, and you're not the only one, Sharon. And I'm glad that this is available now. It's I'm glad that it's able to be used, and like I said, I've heard of a few churches who have used it already, and it makes the idea of reviewing someone else's finances seem a little bit less daunting when you can just go item by item, line by line, and if you are on the other end and you are the church who is going to have your review, you know exactly what the other church is potentially going to ask for, and maybe you can use the checklist to help get yourself prepared as well. So, yeah.
Thank you.
I think Marge did ask at the beginning of the call. I don't know that everyone was on, but this checklist is available on the website. I walked through how to get there. It was emailed out to the treasurer's distribution list, but anyone with access to our website does have access to the checklist and is able to utilize it. Are there any other questions? I'm going to stop sharing just for a moment so I can look at everyone. Are there any other questions or comments or anything else anyone would like to add?
Anthony, I'd just like to say thank you, as everybody else has, for putting this together. And we'll definitely be using it. By the way, I'm Chuck from Cool Spring.
Yeah.
Last time we used Georgetown, and they had a list that was kind of like this, and before that we used to do Snow Hill, which was very different. But this is good to have, and appreciate it.
Good. I'm glad. It's my pleasure. I'm glad.
Thanks for the information.
My pleasure, George. Thank you for being here. All right, friends. If you are not too upset, we will conclude a little bit early today. I appreciate you joining us today. I know there were a couple others who wanted to be here but were unable because of other schedules. So the recording will be available. Thank you, Donna, for handling and taking care of that. Yeah, I appreciate you all being here. If any other questions do arise or suggestions, especially as you're using the checklist, all feedback is welcome. Please let me know. Again, my email address is treasurer at ncpresbytery.org. It's available on the website, which is ncpresbytery.org. And I'm available. Happy to chat about it and take feedback and talk through any things that come up or any other questions that you may have or recommendations as well. Perfect. I hope you all have a wonderful evening. Thank you, everyone.
You too. Thank you.
Thank you.